I'm Braden Francis.
I'm Dawson Baltridge.
I'm Ryan Stuckey.
And I'm Chandler.
And we are open for questions.
About what?
The death penalty.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure you knew as we were going in. Okay. All right.
Gentlemen, would you guys start off by defining the term capital punishment, maybe as it's been used historically and how it's being used now?
Capital punishment is the punishment, usually by death, of somebody who's committed a crime, and they usually do it. You know, their main goal is to deter crime, to scare away people, saying, you know, but this punishment's so bad, this is what's going to happen to you, in an attempt to deter crime.
Okay. Talk to me about the different kinds of capital punishment.
The different forms in the past for execution have been hanging, lethal injection, firing squad, electric chair, gas chamber, and today I believe most states only use lethal injection.
In fact, the majority of them are lethal injection. Since 1976, 1,290 people have been executed with lethal injection.
Okay, so lethal injection is the main one. Other ones that are currently in use besides lethal, you made quite a long list there, Dawson.
I believe we looked up some cases of people that have been sentenced to capital punishment, and I think in 1966 someone was put to death by electric chair.
Okay. There's electric chair still in use. Okay. Other ones that are still in use right now?
The ones still in use are the lethal injection, hanging, gas chamber, and firing squad. But you know, mostly they prefer lethal injection, just due because it's easier, it's quieter. There's been instances where the electric chair has malfunctioned, you know, causing great pain in them to do it over and over again. But I think most of them are still legal. I know all 5 of those are. I don't think there's any other ones, but
I think those are accurate. Ryan, if I've been convicted and sentenced to capital punishment, to the death penalty, do I get to choose which way I die?
I don't think so. I don't know. So.
Some places you do. You can actually choose firing squad. I think Utah, a couple out west, you can actually choose firing squad. If that's how you want to go. Yeah.
And I know,
Good to have options.
I know with the firing squad, to remove the guilt from the people who are actually doing it, there's, you know, it's a group of people and they each have a gun, but only one of the guns is loaded. They all fire off a count of 3 or whatever. So, you know, one person isn't really sure whether they actually have the bullet, to try to help clear the conscience in case, you know, somebody, you know, killing somebody, even if they're convicted criminal, it can still really weigh on somebody.
Okay. And Ryan, you spoke very well about some of the problems that we've had historically with the electric chair. There's been a lot of political debate, a lot of court cases over lethal injection. Can you guys tell me a little bit about what's the legal discussion around lethal injection recently?
So one of the major things has been whether it's technically considered humane or not.
Okay.
Because the patient is still awake, I guess you could say. And so when those drugs are first administered, there is a searing, like, burning pain that happens, and the patient does experience that when they are administered the drugs. And then the next 2 sets of the drugs are what actually is like the toxins and stuff that actually stops like your heart and stuff.
Okay, you used a key word there, humane. Why do we care if it's humane or not?
Because our entire justice system is built off our morals.
Okay. What's the justice system say about whether it has to be humane? What do we have protection against? Oh, where's Mrs. Alder when I need her?
I can go get her.
Okay. We have a law against what? Starts with the word cruel.
Human rights.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
There you go. So the debate is it cruel and is it unusual if what Braden was saying, when they're administering these chemicals, if it's causing undue harm, if it's obviously inhumane, I think is the word that you would use. How do we feel about that, gentlemen? I mean, you've been convicted of a crime, you've been given the death penalty. Do we care if the drugs burn when they go into your arm or not? By we, I mean you.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't speak for the majority, though. We're pretty split panel.
Okay, go ahead. Go across. Ryan, what do you think?
I'm against it, and it's not, for me, it's not as much about the pain and
Okay.
the humane. I mean, I think killing somebody in itself is inhumane, whether they deserve it or not. I don't think I think God's the only one who can really make that call, and you can kind of make an argument for both. In the Bible, there's evidence for and against the death penalty, and so I personally am against it, whether it hurts or not. You know, if I had to, I'd try to make it as painless as possible, I guess.
Dawson?
I'm also against it. I believe that it shouldn't be in the government's hands to kill someone or to take one's life. I mean, we're all created by God, and we should be the main ruler over all of us.
And I think the death penalty is bad as well, because just that whole cruel and unusual punishment part, like, I don't think any person should have to experience that necessarily. Granted, if we do keep the death penalty, there is no way that you can necessarily keep it humane in a way without them experiencing something.
Chandler, doesn't everybody under the Constitution have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Yeah.
So isn't the first word life?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're putting them to death, aren't we depriving them of the right to life?
Yeah, but they already lost their rights whenever they committed this crime, I think.
Fair point. Gentlemen, doesn't the Bible say an eye for an eye? So aren't we eye for an eye? And if you've killed somebody, we put you to death. Isn't that okay, according to the Bible?
It is, but a lot of that's Old Testament law. It also talks about if somebody's killed one person, their life should be taken. But all that's found in the Old Testament, and I think if you look through the Bible, I think it changes over time, where Jesus talked about forgiveness, turning the other cheek. You know, when I think it was Peter cut off the soldier's ear, you know, he was completely against violence, no matter what the guy has done. And for me personally, you look at somebody like Saul, who you know, he stoned people, he killed Christians, persecuted the early church, and you know, using the death penalty, or the argument for the death penalty, I believe he should have gotten the death penalty, but you know, he didn't, and he changed, and you know, he created the church, and he was one of the strongest warriors for God. And so I think, you know, I firmly believe that people can always change, and he's an example of that. So that's a big reason why I'm against the death penalty.
It's really funny that you mentioned Saul, because later when he is obviously Paul, in Romans 13 he writes about how the purpose of the government actually is to act as God's authority on earth, punishing people by the sword, capital punishment, for those that deserve it. That's kind of funny.
Does anybody know how
Thoughts on that?
Does anybody know how Paul died? Just out of curiosity.
Huge martyr business.
He was put to death?
Yeah.
Sorry, back to your question. You had a follow-up question to that.
No, it just says, what are your thoughts on that? I guess that's the question is what's the purpose of the social justice system? Is the purpose of the government to forgive people, or is the purpose of the government to maintain order and act as God's authority of justice on the earth?
I think it is to maintain order. And, you know, the question is, you know, how do you maintain order? It's whether that's, you know, life in prison, whether that's order enough, or whether, you know, you have to kill the person. I wasn't aware of that Bible verse. First of all, that seems a little hypocritical, but yeah, I'm not really sure how to address that. I think that's a tough situation.
Did we hear what Braden and Dawson thought about the death penalty for or against?
We got Dawson.
Yeah.
Did we get you, Braden? You did.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So what are our other options? If we were to do away with the death penalty, what would you think would be appropriate punishment?
I believe that if we were to put away death penalty, they would have life in prison, maybe parole. It depends on the crime, but they have some kind of labor that they would have to do to, you know, pay for what they did, because it's not deterrence is not accomplished through punishment severity, but through the length, such as hard labor. So I think that would be.
Dawson, if I've got life in prison, I know you're not going to kill me, but I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life, and you're telling me to do labor. What if I just tell you no? What are you going to do? Throw me in jail? I mean, I'm already there. You can't kill me.
Solitary confinement.
That's fair.
for it or against it. What would you say to the family of a victim who, the perpetrator of that criminal did, murdered them maybe in some sort of terrible and heinous way, maybe involving tortures and other terrible things? What would you say to that victim's family if you were not in favor of the death penalty? And perhaps that individual is going to receive life in prison. How would you deal with that?
Death penalty doesn't provide any closure for the person, nor does life in prison provide any closure for the person, nor does anything else that we've ever tried provide any real closure for the person. So as far as what the justice system can do, it's not going to solve the problem that they're looking for.
In a study done by Scott Bollum, who is at the University of Minnesota, he's a professor. He reviewed over 150 cases with the capital punishment, and only 17% of the times he found out, it's one of the loved ones to the victim said they found peace, and only 2.5% of those cases they specifically said like it provided closure. So, but if it is one of those 2.5%, I would try to voice my opinion about how I don't think the cure for death is another death. So, hope they understand, but I don't think there's something you can say to fix the holes that might leave in your heart.
Somebody give me an argument about why life in prison doesn't make sense when the death penalty does, as far as the term that we're talking about, as far as the impact on the institution and on the country. What's the difference in life in prison and the death penalty?
A big factor is the price.
Okay.
The price.
So the cost?
Yeah, the cost. In Florida, $3.2 million for an execution, compared to $600,000 for life imprisonment. In Texas, it was $2.3 million per case on average, which is approximately 3 times the cost of imprisoning someone for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that if we give them life in prison, it will also save a bunch of money from all the court cases and the appeals and like all the lawyers and everything.
Okay.
And all the taxpayer money can go somewhere else.
So we can save money if we don't have to do all the court costs and those sorts of things from the death penalty cases. But aren't there still appeals and court costs and things associated with trying to get your conviction overturned if you were life in prison? Now you have a longer time to appeal that case. You may put more money into it.
That's right, but the people on death row, on average, they spend 10 years on death row before they're executed. And those 10 years, if they know their life, that it's a fight for life and death, I think many people are motivated to try harder. They're really going to go for all those appeal courses or cases that they can. And another big part of it is with the death penalty, if it's enacted, the first court that you do is to determine whether they're guilty or not, and then they have to do a separate case. So about with a new jury selected, a new judge, just to determine whether they get life in prison or the death penalty. So that case in itself costs, that pretty much doubles the costs.
What's the rationale for doing it that way? So I have a separate jury that finds me guilty, and I have a separate jury that tells me what I'm going to get. You know the rationale for doing that? I'm just curious.
Do you think our death penalty deters people from committing crimes?
Actually, it doesn't, apparently, because one thing I researched, it stated that but pretty much it said that the death penalty, in a way, had gone up through numbers of executions throughout the years. So it just showed, it said from 1927 to 1998, it had just been a steady increase, but not drastic. But then when the abolition movements came around, it started to decrease a little bit, but then it started going right back up on its upward plane and reached about the same levels of the same number of executions, and if not greater, for certain years.
Why do you think that is?
honestly, I don't know.
And something interesting is that from the 2016 FBI Uniform Crime Report, something that kind of caught my eye was the South historically has had by far the greatest number of executions, and they still account for over 80% of murders, while the Northeast, which holds less than 1% of all executions, they still by far have the least number of murders. And they interviewed the DPIC police chiefs, and they found out that they all considered the death penalty the least effective use of the taxpayers' money in an effort to reduce crime.
So what else do we know about state by state? I know that each state can kind of make its own laws as far as whether it has the death penalty, whether it doesn't. Certainly those court cases are usually played out on the state level. Talk to me about who's the most likely to execute you and who's the least likely to execute you.
Well, the least likely, there's 19 states, including Washington, D.C., that have completely abolished the death penalty.
Okay.
Some of those they're more northern, like Michigan. And so those, it's impossible to get the death penalty.
For a state crime?
Yes, for state crime.
Okay.
And then 4 states, which are Oregon, California, Pennsylvania, and Washington, they have something which allows the governor to examine each case and determine if the death penalty is appropriate for it.
Okay. Who's the most likely to execute me? Where do I not want to commit a capital crime, gentlemen? I'm going up in the Northeast, apparently, if I want to commit a capital crime, but where do I not want to be?
Just stay here.
Yeah,
I would commit one in Texas.
that's probably a good choice. I think Texas may be one of the highest execution. I don't know if it is the highest. I'm pretty sure it is. Yes.
And then Oklahoma, I think.
Oklahoma. That's a good question. Talk to me about the home state here.
Capital punishment is allowed in Kentucky.
Okay.
No offender under the age of 17 can be charged with it.
Okay.
Most cases involve an adult who has been murdered, or who has murdered another person where no mitigating circumstances are present.
Do you happen to know when the last public hanging was in here?
I don't know. That's the last place.
The last public hanging in the United States. Doesn't have it in here, it just has when the first one happened.
And when was the first one?
The first one was the first one in the United States was under in 1622, and that was a man named Daniel Frank in the Virginia colony. And what had happened was, it says that he had planned to, he was a supposed spy for Spain, and he was willing to sell out Britain to Spain. And so, under no legal basis either, they pretty much hanged him.
So, Dawson, you talked a little bit about Kentucky. How can I be executed in Kentucky? We have the death penalty. What are my options?
Lethal injection.
Lethal injection? Is that the only way we execute?
Yeah, we only use lethal injection.
What, and Dawson, you also spoke about nobody under 18 can be executed?
Under 17.
I'm sorry, under 17. Apologize. Under 17. Okay, gentlemen, tell me what other limitations we have on executing people. If you're under 17, we can't execute you. Why else can we not execute you if you've been convicted of a capital crime? I'm thinking of one in particular.
If you're pregnant.
Pregnant would be, okay.
You cannot be executed until the child is born.
Okay, that's a good one. There's another big one I'm thinking of.
And then the insanity clause.
What's that? Talk to me about it, Braden.
So pretty much what that is they try and rehabilitate